In June 2026, a ransomware group calling itself World Leaks broke into the servers of Tata Electronics, one of the companies that assembles iPhones in India. They didn't encrypt a single file. They just moved in quietly and waited. Weeks later, they resurfaced with more than 600 gigabytes of data, over 200,000 files, internal engineering documents for a phone that hadn't been announced, supplier lists, motherboard blueprints, photos and video of prototype units mid-drop test, several stamped Apple Confidential. Apple's lawyers moved almost immediately, getting the leaked footage pulled off social media within about a day. But the company that got breached wasn't the whole story. The same trove also contained files from Tesla, from the chipmaker Qualcomm, from the world's largest chip manufacturer, TSMC. This wasn't an attack on Apple. It was a hit on the infrastructure underneath half of Silicon Valley. Which raises a better question than who leaked it. Why does a phone need this much protection in the first place? And why, with all that protection, does the secret still get out? Start with the object itself. An iPhone isn't built in one factory, by one company. It's assembled from parts sourced across dozens of companies, and, before it ever reaches a store shelf, dozens of countries. Chips from one supplier, camera modules from another, battery cells from a third, the glass, the aluminum, the motherboard. Each one designed and built somewhere else, then shipped just in time to a final assembly line, so that the finished phone appears to the world as if it came from nowhere at all. Tata Electronics is one of those final assembly partners. So is Foxconn, the company most people associate with the iPhone, which runs plants across several countries, including major operations in China. Every one of those companies, at every stage, gets a piece of a secret that hasn't shipped yet. A chip layout here, a housing design there, a full engineering file somewhere else. No single supplier sees the whole picture. But collectively, across the chain, the whole picture exists in hundreds of places at once. And that secret is worth an extraordinary amount of money. To competitors, to journalists, and increasingly to criminals who don't care what the files say, only what someone will pay to keep them quiet. So Apple built a machine to guard that secret, one nearly as engineered as the phone itself. Every prototype gets laser-etched with its own serial number tracked in a system called iTrack and locked away whenever it isn't being actively worked on. Inside Apple's design studios, badges are tiered by clearance level. The most sensitive rooms require an escort. Visitors' cameras get taped over at the door. Suppliers sign what Apple calls an Apple-restricted project agreement, an NDA, with financial penalties steep enough to end a company. When the sapphire glass supplier GT Advanced Technologies went bankrupt in 2014, its own court filings revealed a $50 million penalty clause for leaking Apple's plans. Then there are the decoys. An iPhone 4 prototype was carried around in public, disguised inside the shell of an older iPhone 3GS. An early Apple Watch, nicknamed Gizmo internally, was worn to meetings hidden inside a fake case. And watching over all of it, a team called New Product Security. Partly staffed by former US military and intelligence veterans, it grew from about 10 spot checkers into an in-house audit force that scores more than 100 partner factories every single week, walking the floors, checking badges, counting prototypes against the serial numbers in iTrack. It's an extraordinary amount of engineering, spent on secrecy, and it still isn't foolproof, because the weakest point in any security system built by machines is usually a person. In 2010, an Apple engineer left a disguised iPhone 4 prototype on a bar stool in Redwood City. It ended up in the hands of a tech blog, which paid $5,000 for it, tore it apart on camera, and published every detail, triggering a police raid and a very public reckoning over just how far Apple's secrecy culture could reach. 16 years later, the vulnerability looks different, but the shape is the same. It isn't a careless engineer this time, it's a supplier's server. And it isn't unique to one company or one country. In 2020, ransomware hit a Foxconn plant in Mexico, the same Foxconn that also builds iPhones in facilities across China and elsewhere. Attackers stole internal data and demanded $34 million. Foxconn refused to pay, and some of the data leaked anyway. Apple is even suing a leaker right now over an unrelated leak of iOS 26, a reminder that the legal fights never really stop. Here's the part worth sitting with. Tata Electronics isn't the villain of this story, and neither is any single country. Being part of Apple's supply chain is what makes a company a target, anywhere in the world, at any factory, on any continent. The secret is worth too much for that not to be true. India's government is now investigating. Tata has hired outside forensic auditors. Apple, as always, has said almost nothing publicly. The machine built to guard this phone is one of the most sophisticated in the world. Badges, decoys, ex-intelligence auditors, $50 million contracts. And somewhere, thousands of miles from Cupertino, on one server, none of it was watching. That's not a scandal about one factory or one country's cybersecurity. It's the cost of building the world's most valuable product across the world's most complicated supply chain. A chain with thousands of doors, and only one of them has to be left unlocked. If you want to see how the next machine gets built and guarded, subscribe. The next story's already in the pipeline.